I'm going to explain what a militia is and how it protects against a standing army with a simple infographic here. Okay? If you envision a geographic region like the United States, the mainland United States like this, imagine a standing army being raised, or even several standing armies being raised in the midst of the people, so that they were going to attempt to take their freedom. Let's look at this as even a foreign invading power for the time being. Okay? So let's say 3 standing armies invade the United States and take up these positions as their main positions. So those red dots represent a standing army. The next thing I'm going to show you is what would represent the militias of the people, constituted and being present within the borders of the United States. This is what properly constituted militias would look like. Now, what are standing armies going to do against that force of distributed military power present in the hands of the people? That's what I mean by distributed force. They could take out any of those standing armies essentially by swarming them. Okay, that's what the founders originally intended to mean the security of a free way of life in the United States, by having the entire body of the people well armed and well trained with those arms. This is the standing army the founders were warning us about. We have standing armies in almost every major city. They're called militarized police forces. Now that has taken over, the traditional idea of the standing army. It has taken over, certainly, the traditional idea of the militia. We have the National Guard that has replaced the kind of idea of the militia. It was not meant to be under any kind of a governmental institution. Certainly not a militarized police force, which is what we have in just about every single city within the United States, let alone every state. Okay? There's the standing army we were warned against repeatedly. The militia was seen as absolutely essential, required, and necessary to secure a free way of life. Richard Henry Lee, again, the delegate who actually tabled the notion for the Declaration of Independence, said, to preserve liberty, it is essential that the whole body of the people always possess arms and be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them. You were ingraining in the children not only the ability to use arms, but you were ingraining in them a deep respect for them, as we're going to talk about. A responsibility, for what it meant to own, to possess, and to be trained in the use of firearms. Let's go into the next phrase in the Second Amendment, the right of the people to keep and bear arms. So we have to break down several words in this. We have to break down right. We have to understand what keep means. We have to understand what to bear means, and we have to understand what the word arms means. The people is pretty self-explanatory. That's all of us. What are arms? Simple dictionary definition. Weapons and ammunition of any kind. I challenge anybody, go look it up in a good dictionary. There's the definition you're going to get. It does not mean just guns, just firearms. It means anything that you are capable of picking up and using as a piece of defensive weaponry. A hammer is arms. Okay? A club is arms. A knife is arms. A bow and arrow. A handgun or a semi-automatic rifle. Okay? They're all arms. It's what can you use in a defensive capacity when you are being accosted with violence against your life, your freedom, or your property. Speaking of the possession of arms, James Berg, author of a book called The Ideological Origins of the Second Amendment, wrote, "The possession of arms is the distinction between a free man and a slave, it being the ultimate means by which freedom was to be preserved. Unarmed people are enslaved people, ladies and gentlemen. Free people have the means to defend their freedom. Period. Anyone who is disarmed is made into a slave." That's how you should read that. In natural law, there is equality of rights, as opposed to in man's law, where some people have rights that other people don't have magically. I'd love for people to explain to me how that situation actually works out, because it doesn't exist in nature. Everyone in reality has the same exact rights. No one has any more or less rights than anyone else does. Since rights are not created by humanity because they exist objectively and inherently in nature by way of them being actions in nature. No human being or group of human beings is actually capable of, quote, granting rights to anyone else, nor is any human being capable of, quote, unquote, revoking rights from anyone else. These are claims that are made by people who believe that they have such capabilities, that they have such power. But in nature, in reality, that can never be done. Rights can never be granted or revoked. They exist inherently in nature, and they are immutable. They are unchangeable, because they are based in whether an action causes harm or not to another being. And that exists inherently, naturally in the real world, not as a construct or an idea in someone's mind. To bear simply means to carry. Okay, it does not mean to brandish or to take out and wave around, okay, as some people believe it does. It simply means to carry on your person. So when we understand, if we understand the natural law that no one actually has the right to grant or revoke someone's rights, how can licensure come into the picture? How can one group of people say, we have the right to license if you put a gun on your hip, cover it up with your shirt, and walk out the door? Yet many people will insist that that can be done. I ask, if no individual can grant somebody else that right, how can a group grant somebody else that right? Who, anywhere, can grant or refuse to grant a right which already exists to someone else? That is my question on this slide. And the answer is no one can. The correct answer, regardless of what anyone thinks, the correct answer is that cannot really be done by anyone. It can only be claimed by some and believed in by others. Infringement is the road to slavery. Once again, the co-author of the Second Amendment, George Mason, said, to disarm the people is the best and most effectual way to enslave them. He understood this. As soon as the government has weapons the people don't have, that's an enslaved society. Thomas Jefferson said the strongest reason for people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is, as a last resort, to protect themselves against tyranny in government. It was not about hunting rights. It was not even about self-defense within your own home, although that comes into the picture. But ultimately, the ownership of firearms was about defense against tyranny. And anybody that says it wasn't, all you need to do is go right to the founders' words themselves. They were all too happy to explain it over and over again, unambiguously, what they meant by the right to keep and bear arms. It wasn't about any of these other things. It was about your ability to defend yourself against a standing militarized presence in your midst. That is what it was about. Unambiguously, that's what it was about. And I won't let Thomas Jefferson have the last word on that. I'll let Adolf Hitler have the last word on that. Hitler said the most foolish mistake we could possibly make would be to permit the conquered Eastern peoples to have arms. History teaches that all conquerors who have allowed their subject races to carry arms have prepared for their own downfall by doing so. So let's not have any native militia. German troops alone will bear the sole responsibility for the maintenance of law and order. It worked out real well, didn't it? This is what some people here in the United States would like to see. Only government with access to firearms. And go get that chart in the back on your way out of here tonight, and you'll find out what happens. Here it is, right here. A little difficult to see with the fine print, but there's the number, folks. Over 90 million civilians have been murdered by governments within the last 100 years, the last century alone, as a direct result of implemented gun control measures. 90 million souls. Almost 300 million individuals in totality when you count in all wars, military combatants plus civilians. 90 million civilians murdered by their own governments, not foreign governments, their own. Okay? This is democide, death by government. And that chart in there, out there on the way out, it has this within it. It's by JPFO. You can check their website out. And, you know, they have a great film out called Innocence Betrayed that I highly recommend everybody watch, too, about what happens when gun control measures are passed. 90 million people in the last 100 years from 1915 to 2015. There are 27 words worth fighting for, ladies and gentlemen. We have to continue to fight for them, or we're going to be in infinitely worse trouble than we're already in. But they are just words. They are. I have to make that statement. They're words that convey very important ideas, but they are just words. You know, when it really comes down to it, tyrants don't care about truth. Tyrants don't care about truthful ideas or concepts. They most certainly don't care about rights. That's why they're tyrants. They're conquerors. They're enslavers. That's why words are one thing, but being ready is entirely another thing. And I would hope that a presentation like this would help people to understand the true meaning and purpose of those 27 important words. But then I would also hope that it would inspire action. And it would help people to start to put yourself in the psychological mindset of preparedness, of responsibility, of right action. You know, come to think of it, maybe I would have added just 4 extra words to the Second Amendment right there. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for your kind attention.